It's a pleasure to be here with all of you this afternoon. The post-gelato duty is always tough duty, so if y'all nod off, I'll understand. But see what I can do to keep it relatively painless. Fortunately, what we've got is actually, I think, not only an interesting topic to talk about today, but actually one that creates some real room and some real opportunities for creative thinking. So much of what we do when we talk about educational improvement, when we talk about improving our nation's schools, when we talk about getting involved, it's really about a game of inches. We're trying to figure out how to do this a bit better. But what I want to talk about with you today is I think there's actually opportunities for business to pick up 10 and 20 and 30 yards at a pop. There's real opportunities where I think business going back 30 and 40 years, because of the way we have tended to approach the question of education reform, because of what we have thought of as the appropriate business role, we have tended to play small ball. And what I want to encourage you all today is to start thinking differently about the challenges of education improvement. Now, I'm not going to spend any time taking you through data on the state of American education for two reasons. One, this is a sophisticated, educated crowd. I'm sure you've been beat to death over the years with Time Magazine and New York Times stories about the state of American education. I don't need you to run through that one more time. And second, I'm not going to talk about education in Kentucky because I'm just going to show off my ignorance. And the commissioner is going to be here a bit later and can actually talk to you out of knowledge and specifically about what's going on. So I want to talk to you not about diagnosing the situation and just real quick, the situation ain't great. We're about the middle of the pack at best in the world. Arguably, we're losing ground slowly. And B, all of you know that even if we were doing well, education is going to be so crucial to the livelihood we can offer our kids going forward in terms of the vibrancy of our business environment, the quality of life, and the health of our democracy, that even if we were doing well, we still owe it to our kids to push the ball down the field. Now, when business thinks about these questions of education, the historic approach going back at least to the 60s, and really if you go back in the deep history of this stuff, going back a century or more, has been to focus on encouragement and support. Business supports mentoring programs, releases professionals to go be reading buddies twice a month. I can't think of any bigger waste of talent than to have highly educated CPAs and attorneys reading 101 to second graders twice a month, but that's just me. And we've engaged in this kind of genteel philanthropy, where we underwrite scholarship programs, we provide computers, we contribute $50,000 for this or that program that got written up in this or that journal. Is there anything wrong with any of this? Of course not. This is good. This is nice. It ain't going to amount to anything. And it hasn't amounted to anything. It was more than 25 years ago that President Reagan's Department of Education issued the seminal report, A Nation at Risk, when we said that if a foreign nation had done to our schools what we were doing to ourselves, we would declare it we would deem it tantamount to a state of war. Our the NAEP scores, National Assessment of Educational Progress scores, since that time, haven't budged. 27 years after declaration of war, and we haven't moved the needle. And it's not for lack of caring about it and for lack of pompous speeches and for lack of emotion. It's because we don't really know what we're doing. And that's what I want to talk about with you today. I want to talk about how do you actually get engaged in a way that's going to make more of a difference. Get past this nice Clark Kent approach that we've used for so long. And frankly, it's important for business to realize that it has a huge role to play here. De Havilland Associates a couple years ago surveyed superintendents about who their most valuable and influential partners were, ahead of the PTA, ahead of the civil rights community, ahead of everybody else, the business community. When asked who was it most important that they have the backing of during bond issues, the business community. This was true in rural communities, suburban communities, and urban communities. Business is holding major cards here. It's just a question of whether or not you want to play them. Well, we keep hearing three complaints that businesses tried to help with over the years. The first is that we need more money in education. That red line, that's us. Now, this is OECD data from '06, which obviously means it's, yes, 4 years old. But this being the OECD, this is, of course, their most current data. Gotta love public policy, don't you? Those are some of our fellow nations. U.S. spends more per pupil than any other nation in the world on education, on K-12. We just do. Now, do we need to spend more? Maybe. I don't know how one figures that out with certainty. But the notion that somehow our schools are underfunded relative to our competitors, that's a tough case to make. Now, why is it that we hear so often that our schools are underfunded? Well, because we're suckers. I'm an executive editor for a magazine called Education Next. We ran a survey, this is I think 2 years old now, where we asked Americans, based on your best guess, how much money is spent each year for a child in public schools in your school district. The average guess was $4,200 a year. When you match that with the zip code from which they responded, actual per pupil spending nationally was $10,300. When you give them a prompt that says, remember, you got to pay administrator salaries, construction, maintenance, the rest of it, people guessed $5,200, which was still only half of what we're actually spending. So there's a real issue here in that we're spending a lot of money. People think we're spending a lot less than we are. We've now run onto fiscal shoals of our irresponsibility and our failure to make hard choices. And what we're hearing is, oh my goodness, there's no way we're going to improve schooling unless we put more money into it. Well, right now we're taking money out of police, we're taking money out of Homeland Security, we're taking money out of fire, we're taking money out of roads, we're taking money out of a lot of things. As much as I'd like us to be able to spend more money on education, the odds aren't great. There's a need to do better with what we've got. Fortunately, the second issue is we keep hearing that it's a matter of teacher quality. And again, if we've spent a lot of money and haven't gotten much bang for the buck, here's one reason why. We've heard a lot about class size. The research base for class size reduction is incredibly thin. We can talk about this if you want, but it's just not there. Here's a simple way to think about it. We've actually tripled the number of teachers in this country over the last 50 years. We've gone from 1.1 million teachers to 3.3 million. More than 10% of all working adults with college degrees are teachers in this country today. More than 10% of all college graduates are teachers. What that means is it's tough to be too selective about who we hire. It means we've got to spread training over a lot of people, and it means that we've got to spread salary over a lot of bodies. Now, what this has allowed us to do, what we sometimes forget, is dramatically slash class size. In the late 1950s, we had 27 kids per teacher in our schools. Today, we have about 15 and a half. If you walk into your kid's classroom and you don't see 15 and a half kids, all right, 15, 16, you know, right? That would just be an ugly visual. That's because of the way we're making decisions about staffing. In fact, what we know internationally is that nations that massively outperform us, say on 8th grade math, Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, have average 8th grade math sizes of 40 to 50 kids a class. This means they only need half or a third as many teachers as we do. It means they can pay them twice or 3 times as much. It means they can be far more selective and far more careful about the quality of training that they offer. What a crazy idea. In fact, despite all of this, despite the fact that we've increased the number of teachers since the early 70s, 50% faster than we've increased the number of kids, teachers are still not bad paid. The census reports nationally, average teacher salary before bennies is about $52,000. Bennies in the public sector, especially in schooling, outstrip their private sector counterparts. So your FTE compensation for teachers teaching a 9-month calendar is about $66,000 or $69,000 per nationally. If you look right here, here's teachers on an hourly basis, outstripping state and local engineers and architects, private sector computer programmers, private sector accountants and auditors, and so forth. This is census data.